Hey, I'm Carol Gashoro and welcome to Let It Rip. We're coming to you from the CUNY TV studios in the shadow of the Empire State Building in New York City. Now, earlier this month, the NYPD Police Commissioner, Keechant Sewell, who is black and the first woman to serve in that role, abruptly resigned. Sewell had been the police commissioner for less than 18 months. While Sewell did not provide a reason for her resignation, news reports indicate that she may have resigned because her authority was being undermined by the mayor's office, along with rumored chauvinistic practices. For example, Sewell had to consult with Mayor Adams before making any merit-based promotions. Now, prior to the Adams administration, police commissioners were able to make those decisions independently. A decision to discipline then Lieutenant John Schell, who killed a young man a couple of years ago and was recently promoted to deputy chief, along with Jeffrey Madry, the highest-ranking uniformed officer in the NYPD, who overrode a sergeant's decision to book a former colleague who pursued 3 boys in Brownsville with his firearm drawn, did not sit well with the mayor's office and has drawn severe criticism from some members in the New York City Council. Now, while statistics indicate that overall crime was down under Sewell, she still rejected over half of the disciplinary recommendations sent to her by the Civilian Complaint Review Board. Additionally, a federal monitor's report highlighted that NYPD's neighborhood safety teams were making too many unlawful stops and frisks, finding that 97% of the people stopped were black and Hispanic. Perhaps it's time to seriously consider another approach to public safety. That is, that the police commissioner should be an elected position that will allow New York City residents to hold them accountable. Now, here to help us discuss Keechant Sewell's resignation and the power dynamic between the mayor and the police commissioner and what police reform should look like is Shavona Newsom, co-founder of Black Lives Matter of Greater New York, an NYPD detective and the first vice president of the NYPD Guardians Association, Eric Blake. I'm Carol Gashoro and this is Let It Rip. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
Shavona,
Thank you.
let's start with you. What do you think about the news reports that indicate that Commissioner Sewell was dealing with a lot of male chauvinism and patriarchy within the NYPD?
I can absolutely believe it. We see how Mayor Eric Adams runs the city. It's absolute dictatorship. So any problems that we're having in the city, any woman who's being micromanaged, anytime the police are getting away every weekend with brutalizing us, it all falls on the desk and at the hands of Mayor Eric Adams. So I am not surprised, disappointed, because this is who New York elected. This is the person who should be representing us and being the voice for the people, the greatest city in the world. But it's in his character and it's in his failed leadership. So this comes as no shocker.
Ah, okay. And Eric, what do you think about the claims that the NYPD is essentially an all-boys club?
I think society is an all-boys club. Let's call it what it is. United States of America is an all-boys club. Being a member of the department, being a member of the NYPD, it's a club. All boys, women trying to make upward mobility, men trying to make upward mobility. The reality is people are in position because they've been in position from the past, and they've been elevated from the time they signed on to the job.
Right.
So you say 10 years ago, I got elected, I got on the job. In about another 10 years, okay, maybe I'll be a commissioner. What's happening now is I see a lot more women are applying for these jobs, are taking the test to be promoted, and are reaching the pinnacles to now be in the upper echelons of what you call it, of supervisorship. I just made that word up. But the reality is they're in the position now where they can be seen, and I hate to say they, women, can be seen, so now it's time to allow them in.
Okay. Is that an effective solution towards the...
It's not, and it's actually not an effective answer. As the co-founder of Black Lives Matter Greater New York and Black Opportunities, I can speak on any matters of it, on its policy, on its practices, and so we're talking about sexism right now, right? But the whole NYPD's policies and practices need to be addressed. It needs to be a level and playing field for any woman who should want to achieve, but it's hard for me to advocate for any black woman or black man who chooses to be in the NYPD to be completely transparent because they're no longer black. You're no longer a woman when you join this corrupt system that was built after slavery. I think you kind of lose your identity to be amongst this crowd, to be amongst this gang. Like once you're a gang member, you lay down all your past ways and you support this gang. So I really don't feel too much sympathy for Sewell because as someone who holds that title of being commissioner, she should have took up some space.
Okay.
Which she did. Oh, just let me finish this point.
Right.
Like, we're gonna get into it. We'll get into it, but I'm ready for it.
Yeah, because I don't want Eric to
No
sit down.
problem.
Okay. Eric, I want to come back to you with regard to what Shavonna just said. Is there any truth to the idea that black folks in the NYPD essentially bleed blue as opposed to being black, that somehow their blackness disappears when they put on the uniform or they get the badge?
Well, let me first say, I'm the first vice president of NYPD Guardians Association,
Right.
which is a collaborative group of mainly black members of the department. What has to stop is the narrative that there is a complete separation when it comes to upward mobility, when it comes to movement within the department, when it comes to ability and opportunities.
Right.
What it boils down to, and I support all of the...
But when you're talking about Blue Lives Matter, what does that mean when cops are saying Blue Lives Matter?
I believe it was, not even I believe, Blue Lives Matter is the same ideology, so to speak, of all lives matter. It just so happens we're NYPD.
But is there any truth to that, though? Right?
Not from my perspective.
No, I'm not, and I'm not attributing that to you. I'm just saying because it's coming from essentially people who are cops. And compared to what Shavonna just said with regard to Black Lives Matter, can you really have a juxtaposition of Blue Lives Matter?
You can't separate, and that's the problem. I think that's a good reason why I'm here, because it's my position that you cannot separate that. Blue lives matter, Black lives matter, white lives matter, gray lives matter. Lives matter. It's policy that has to change. It's incorporation of new things that has to change.
All right.
See what I'm saying?
Shavonna, I'll give you 6 seconds
Okay,
to
Blue
respond.
Lives Matter is complete racism. It's complete bull crap.
Right.
And let's be real, as we seen with the insurrection that happened on January 6th, as we seen NYPD officers arrested and charged in those crimes, it's a racist organization. I just can't sit here and discuss the practices of a racist organization that was used to arrest, harm, and take people back to slavery, and to pretty much keep us a slave under the Constitution, because once you're in prison, you're no longer that.
You know, when you say it's a racist organization,
Yes, absolutely.
how then would you respond to the stop and frisk that Federal Monitor's report just came back and said that they were stopping too many black and brown folks, and that the neighborhood safety teams are essentially being located in predominantly black and brown neighborhoods?
Well, first of all, I think that's just a radical statement about being racist. It's just radical.
No, it's a fact.
Well,
If you
we
check
got-
statistics.
let him
it's-
just-
God, allow me to have
Right.
my point.
Let him just finish.
I allowed you to talk, so allow me to talk. It's a radical statement, in my opinion. I can say that. But the stop, question, and frisk, we've been back and forth with this. We've had this discussion 10 years ago when I was on it.
Right.
They're putting people, cops, in positions and places where supposedly there's a lot of crime, right? If there's a lot of crime, there's a lot of people getting stopped, right?
Right,
That's the reality.
So, Shavonna, would you like to respond?
I'll break it down for him.
Okay.
And I'll break it down for your viewers, okay?
From your perspective.
No, from statistics.
So,
Like
let it go.
everyone here could Google this. Like it's research and it's tons of like even look into the FBI's records. It's all there. Poverty is the mother of crime. Crime is about opportunity. So in black and brown communities where we fall under the poverty line, where we have a subpar education system because that's based on tax dollars, you are going to see crimes more committed. Now going back to your original question of stop and frisk, I think there were about 15,000 stops of black men and brown men and almost no guns recovered. This is not a new practice because Eric Adams is a bargain basement Giuliani. What he's just grabbing from that old playbook, it's racial profiling at its finest. You do not see this happening into other communities. I had a very, very, very public argument after because I spoke on this. I fought for this. This is super important. The biggest fight when he was elected, Mayor Adams, with my organization and with the sitting mayor, is he wanted to bring back this organization. We stopped him from allowing officers to ride around in plain clothing. Now we see they're only going to target our community. Young black men driving in a car does not scream crime, and the statistics show that they are not recovering weapons.
Okay. So I'll come back to you, Eric. Do you have a response to what Shavonna just indicated? Because she is citing some of the stuff that was in the Federal Monitor's report.
Right. in a community where there are a lack of resources,
Right.
you are going to find a way to get what you need in order to survive.
Okay.
So that terminology I use is
Right.
fight or flight, and that's just for survival.
Okay.
Does that now, which now and sometimes it turns into crime.
But does that mean that instead of addressing some of the issues that are prompting people to do what it is that they're doing, but rather that you increase the very resources that you said, there are no resources in that community?
Well, that's what, and I've stated that before previous, that resources need to be funneled into communities, and there need to be accessibility to the resources.
Okay.
That's what I think needs to happen.
Okay, fair point. But I think you're not really getting to the heart of my question, right? Which is this idea that if folks need more resources, why then are we not getting them more resources, but instead what we're doing is getting them more police officers?
Well, that's talking to policy that the community needs to now reach out to their council persons, their assembly persons, and demand that. The same way other things are demanded, demand that.
Okay, great point. So, Siobhan, I'm going to come back to you. What are your thoughts in terms of making the police commissioner an elected position as opposed to an appointed position?
I absolutely agree with that.
Okay.
And I love that he stated a whole argument for defunding the police. We need less cops in communities and more resources. That's what the whole campaign was about. But to go back to your question, I absolutely think that the citizens of New York City should vote in someone with that much power. So if that alleged patriarchy, which we know, not alleged, that patriarchy that exists there, it wouldn't happen because this person wouldn't be hand and cherry picked by the mayor or upcoming mayor of the city. New Yorkers need to strip away this power. No one knows really what goes on behind this blue wall, as we see that officers are allowed to act with impunity. And New Yorkers, having an elected police commissioner would hold the NYPD slightly more accountable.
Okay. Eric, I want to come to you. I'm guessing that you and your colleagues would disagree with the police commissioner being an elected position as opposed to one that is appointed, right?
I mean, you elected the mayor, and the mayor has authority and power. You elected that person with all these different powers and different decision-making abilities. Now, if it doesn't go your way, now we need to take away some of those different things. No, no, it shouldn't be that
Okay.
at all.
And so you don't think that there's going to be great accountability, as Shavona indicated?
We have federal monitoring for accountability. We have things of that nature. But the community elected the mayor, knowing that he has this, and this power.
Okay, great. Great discussion. It remains clear that we have to consider alternatives to the current public safety model if we want a different outcome. I want to thank both our guests, Shavona Newsom, co-founder of Black Lives Matter of Greater New York, and Eric Blake, NYPD detective and first vice president of the NYPD's Guardian Association. We'll take a short break, and when we come back, we'll take a look at New York City's affordable housing crisis. I'm Kero Gashoro, and this is Let It Rip. Like many cities across the nation, New York City is also grappling with an affordable housing crisis, which is at its worst point in nearly 2 decades. Now, a city housing survey revealed that less than 1% of the apartments priced below $1,500 were vacant and available for rent. Rents have been increasing drastically in the 5 boroughs, with Manhattan topping the list with a median monthly rent of $4,205. And things are not looking any better for working families in New York City. This news only heightens their economic anxiety and stress because already half of the city's households are unable to pay rent, with many dedicating over 30% of their income to pay rent. Here to help us discuss New York City's affordable housing crisis is a council member for Brooklyn's 36th District, Chi Yosei. Welcome, council member.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, glad to have you. Now, I know this is not an issue that is only relevant to your constituents, that you also had some issues trying to find an affordable housing apartment. We'd love to hear more about your experience.
Absolutely. So a couple of months ago, I moved out of the home that I grew up in.
Yes.
And jumped headfirst into the housing crisis that many New Yorkers are experiencing in New York City. It was competitive. Many of the 1-bedrooms that I was looking for within Bed-Stuy and Crown Heights were extremely expensive.
Right.
The amount of money that one has to pay for a broker's fee was definitely something that deterred me on jumping into one apartment or another.
Right.
And I wanted to share that experience, you know, as an elected official.
And you also had to adjust the amount of rent that you were willing to pay at one point during your search, correct?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think I was a little naive in terms of what rents would look like within central Brooklyn, and much to my surprise, surprised. They were a lot more than I expected.
Right.
And I wanted to share that story to not only my constituents, but New Yorkers, that this problem is so bad that even their local elected officials, like myself, have trouble finding an apartment.
Oh, excellent. So were you successful in finding an apartment?
I did find an apartment, and I always want to acknowledge the privilege that I have as being, an elected official and being in the position that I'm in.
Okay.
But so many New Yorkers are not in the position that I'm in, whether they're single parents, whether they are carrying housing vouchers. There are so many obstacles in the pathway of finding safe, secure housing for thousands, hundreds of thousands of New Yorkers.
Right, and I want to piggyback off your last comment, because when you look at the black population in Brooklyn, it's actually been declining over the last 10 years. And one of the reasons that it's been declining is because a lot of folks just cannot pay the rent, particularly in Brooklyn. How would you be able to reverse that trend?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And in my district in particular, in Bed-Stuy, we saw the largest amount of black folks move out of our community compared to every other neighborhood within the city. Over 22,000 black folks moved out.
Yes.
And I believe over 30,000 non-black or white folks moved into the neighborhood.
Right, mostly white folks that are the ones who
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
There are multiple ways that we can combat that. You know, I think that reversing gentrification will be rather difficult, but mitigating it is certainly part of my strategy. So I want to activate as many city-owned lots within my district to be HPD, 100% affordable housing units. I want to take a look at some of our corridors within the district that can maybe go under rezonings to build more housing. I want us to tackle warehousing in the city of New York. I think a report came out that over 50,000 rent-stabilized units are being warehoused within New York City. These are all routes to make housing more accessible and affordable to New Yorkers and constituents within districts just like mine.
So one of the things that folks have been saying is that the city council actually has the power to stop the level of gentrification that New Yorkers have been experiencing for, again, the last 10, 15 years. And part of that is because you have the power to go ahead and say to any developer coming into into your district to say, I want 100% affordable housing. But it seems some of your colleagues are more than willing sometimes to compromise and say we'll take 70 market rate and 30 affordable housing. What would you say to that?
Well, I would say that claim is a bit debatable. I think when a developer is approaching a plot of land that they can build as of right, I mean, this is America, this is a capitalist city, they have a leg to stand on when it comes to housing that they want to build. And developers are always trying to make the biggest bang for their buck. So as a council member, of course, you can come back and say that you want 100% affordable housing. However, they could drop out of the deal and do what they just did in Harlem, where they built a truck depot instead of housing as a whole. So as council members, you have to be very intentional about negotiating with developers, but sometimes it's really hard to get to 100% affordable housing. However, the city needs to be investing more money into building 100% affordable housing.
Okay. Rent stabilized apartments are going to be going up. Is there a way that we can go ahead and tell them you can't raise the rents because people are still struggling, even though other folks are saying we're well out of the pandemic, the economy has rebounded, but that's not really the truth for a lot of working folks.
It's not true. I mean, the rent is too damn high. The rent has always been too damn high in the city of New York. I've been yelling, screaming from rooftops since the beginning of May, along with some of my colleagues as well as some nonprofits within the city. In the first week of May, I took the stage at one of the Rent Guidelines Board preliminary hearings where they proposed rents to be increased by 16% for 2-year leases, which was completely outrageous. And even though the Rent Guidelines Board is a mayoral appointed board, I feel frustrated being an elected official or someone in government and feeling powerless, and I know so many New Yorkers feel the same way. So I've been activating and organizing with tenants across the city. Last week, we turned out a record amount of people to show up to a Rent Guidelines Board hearing. We had a TikTok that went viral with over 150,000 views of bringing out New Yorkers to tell the Rent Guidelines Board that the rent is too damn high. They will go homeless if the rent increases by 7%. They cannot afford food if the rent increases by 7%.
And so what would be ideal for working people?
When it comes to rent increases?
Because one of the things that, again, the city council can do is say, hey, rather than use the New York City average median income, is that what we're going to require you to do is to use the AMI for our particular district, which I think knocks down the rent a couple of pegs. Right.
And when it comes to the AMI, that's a conversation that many of my colleagues are engaging with our federal partners. There's a bill that Congresswoman Yvette Clarke has on shifting the AMI from a larger general area like the greater city of New York down to more specific communities, because of course the AMI is different in Bed-Stuy than it may be for Upper East Side. So that's a different conversation that we have to have with our federal partners, and then also something that we push and provide as a negotiation tactic when it comes to developers trying to build within our community.
So I want to shift gears a little bit, and particularly to landlords. One of the things that, and I know a lot of black folks in Brooklyn, some of whom own, whether it's 3-family houses, use that, may rent out maybe one particular floor to try and at least, offset some of the, whether it's the mortgage or the property taxes. But some of their complaints have been that, electricity is quite high, gas is quite high, and that also affects their decision to go ahead and increase the rent. What would you say to some of those folks, and how can you try and balance those interests out?
Yeah, so that's a question that I'm definitely asked, especially in relation to the Rent Guidelines Board. The Rent Guidelines Board only pertains to rent-stabilized units.
That's true.
So most of those small landlords or people that live within the buildings of 1 to 3 dwellings are not rent-stabilized units. So they are not affected by what happens with this Rent Guidelines Board vote. I do believe that that's a tactic used by the real estate industry when it comes to combating the claims that tenants have and increases in rent by weaponizing small black and brown landlords who make up many of my family members.
That's correct.
But it's not true in terms of what we're pushing back against when it comes to the Rent Guidelines Board's proposed increase.
Okay, so I also want to shift gears a little bit with regard to this, and I want to come back to the AMI issue, because we've seen your colleague in the council, Charles Barron. He has been pretty consistent in saying he wants 100% affordable housing in his district, and he seems to have been really, really successful at doing that. Is that a paradigm that many of your colleagues could replicate to make sure that at least, particularly in low-income neighborhoods, that what they're seeing is the kind of developments that are going to guarantee that they stay in their neighborhoods as opposed to being pushed out via gentrification?
Every single council district is not created equal. Every single council district does not have the same housing demand as other council districts. So one council member may be able to fight for 100% affordable or AMI units within their district, but that potentially cannot be the same strategy that a council member somewhere else can use.
What would be the difference in terms of saying that, hey, this council member is able to ask for 100%, but somebody else is not going to be able to do the same?
Well, absolutely. I mean, when you look at the rents in Bed-Stuy compared to the rents in East New York, the rents in Bed-Stuy are vastly higher. They're closer to the train station, sometimes closer to Manhattan. That's usually how rents range across the city. And when a developer is approaching, a district like mine compared to a district like any of my other colleagues that may not be in as much of a transit-rich district, it's harder to advocate for 100% affordable housing because at the end of the day, when it comes to an as-of-right plot of land, the developer is still trying to make money within their deal.
Okay, fair enough. So I want to go back to your early campaign. One of the things that was very unorthodox. You're a first-time comer, and now that you've been in government for close to 2 years now, what would you say are some of the successes that you've enjoyed and something that you're extremely proud of?
Absolutely. I'm excited about the energy that I've been bringing to legislating, to being an elected official, to leading my district for as long as I have. I've passed 2 pieces of legislation, one hoping to curb and tackle the rodent population within New York City.
I know you said let's talk about rats in your campaign.
Absolutely, and that's something that I hope to follow through on. And another to provide Narcan and harm reduction to every bar and nightclub within New York City. I still get DMs today of people who are saying that their lives were saved or their friends' lives were saved through a piece of legislation that I proposed and passed within my first term.
So it's been a great discussion, but we'll have to end it there. I want to thank our guest council member, Chi Osei from Brooklyn's 36th District. We'll take a short break, and when we come back, we'll take a look at the state of the upcoming presidential elections with a focus on third-party candidate Dr. Cornel West. I'm Kerry Gashero. This is Let It Rip. Hey, I'm Kerry Gashero, and welcome back to Let It Rip. The run-up to the 2024 presidential elections is heating up. President Joe Biden is running for re-election, but current polling suggests that there may be voter fatigue among many Democratic voters, and that the recent misdemeanors against his son, Hunter Biden, are further dampening voter enthusiasm. And Donald Trump, despite his numerous legal issues, remains the Republican Party's frontrunner. Now, while the announcement of Tim Scott, the senator from South Carolina, appears to be a step in diversifying the crowded Republican presidential field, his appeal to voters that America is no longer a racist country ignores the ongoing disenfranchisement of black and brown communities. Dr. Cornel West, the progressive activist and professor, has also declared his candidacy in the presidential race as a third-party candidate. Dr. West's entry into the race should not come as a surprise because there's a long history of third-party candidates challenging the two-party system. There's a growing appetite for a candidate who will challenge the status quo. The Republicans made it clear that they not only support the Supreme Court's decision in overturning Roe v. Wade, but they are willing to block legislation aimed at addressing climate change. And they have also shown they are willing to ignore black voters by their grotesque attacks on voting rights. Democrats, on the other hand, some believe, have long used black people to get elected and then proceeded to neglect their concerns once they're in office. This is one of the many reasons why a third-party presidential candidate is important. Some people will argue that Dr. West's candidacy will peel off Democratic voters from President Biden, which increases the probability of a Republican candidate winning, Ralph Nader being a prime example. But is this the time that all Americans not only vote in their best interests, but also vote their collective hopes and aspirations? Will Dr. West's candidacy push the conversation further to the left? Or is this just another protest candidacy creating confusion that takes away the focus from stopping right-wing extremism? We'll find out soon enough. I'm Kato Yashiro, and this is Let It Rip.